of course, that's all very well, but first we had to get there, and the distance from Chester to Ancona is 1,300 miles, and we had 13 stops. And we allowed 21 days to get there. It was a bit odd really, because we weren't quite sure whether this was a holiday or part of the journey, so we always had that pressure. We wanted to make sure we could get there in time. We got to Greece. We had 10 stops, and really basically this is when our holiday started. First stop, Prague, we had 5 days. On our main stop was at Gielova, where we had 2 weeks. After a 275-mile journey from Chester to Canterbury, we had a brief stop, and then in the morning we hopped over to Dover to catch the ferry. Bit of a grey day, but there's the famous cliffs. Soon we were in Calais. And we're on our way to our first continental stop, Ypres. Stayed here many times. Whoa, I don't think we've had this before. This is really unusual. We've never had to book before in September, and I think mainly it's because since COVID there has been so many vans sold that it's got so much busier in October even. Anyway, there's a road just by the air that we could park up here. You couldn't stay the night, but it was great. We just walked into Ypres to have a look round. We'd found an air about a mile from the city centre. Some trenches have been well preserved. They may look nicely preserved now, but they weren't like this when my grandfather was there. They were just full of water, and when they were relieved from their particular part of duty, they were taken back to a bit of R&R. But my grandfather said they took their uniforms up and ironed them because to kill all the ticks in their clothes, and he used to say you can hear them going tick 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 tick, and he said, "I give you buggers." One particular harrowing night, he was with his best mate on guard, and his mate turned to him and said, "Hey up, Lou, you better move back, these are getting a bit close." And as he stepped back, there was a huge bang, and when he woke up, he couldn't see his friend, and he found him in the water, submerged in the water, with his head, well, half his head blown off. It's a testimony, really, to the stupidity of the human race, and it's a very sobering area to visit for the devastation that's still obvious today. We're just outside Ypres at a camper stop, and this is just down the road, and these are the North Staff's Regiment, which is the regiment my grandfather served in, and lucky to survive, really.
Staffordshire name, not towns.
Oh yeah, it's 1917, 1920, 19, very young people. Can you imagine somebody today being killed at 19 for a stupid war? Annette's grandfather also served here, and miraculously he survived too. Ypres itself was absolutely decimated, and the famous cloth hall that dominates the city today was completely destroyed. The buildings you see today were rebuilt after World War I to the original design. Anyway, to continue our journey, this is the air we found, and you could cycle into Ypres or you could actually walk. After driving through the town, we found this amazing spot, completely free, just about enough room for about 4 motorhomes. And from here, it's just a short walk into town. We did our usual thing. We walked into town, had a coffee, did some exploring, and there's lots to do here and has amazing history. Dinant is a city in Belgium's Wallow region. It's on the banks of the Meuse River and backed by steep cliffs. Perched on an outcrop above the town is a centuries-old fortified citadel. It's now a museum, and it's got swooping views of the town below. Sitting below it is the Gothic Collegiate Church, with its unique onion dome and lantern. Dinant was also the birthplace of Adolphe Sax, the inventor of the saxophone. Beautiful as this spot is, we didn't stay here because it was so noisy. The motorbikes that were passing by really would have driven us mad in the night, so we did think we'd sleep. We found another place about 2 miles away. We looked it up on Park for Night, and who would have thought that it was going to take us through this very isolated but beautiful countryside. It leads to a tiny little village, and who would have thought that in the middle of there it would be an area for motorhomes. I mean, there's nothing there. I mean, it was very nice when we got there, but it just makes you wonder. It doesn't happen in the UK, does it? It is beautiful countryside, though, isn't it? And as always, as you travel through a village like this, you never see anybody. You just wonder where they are, really. There is a bus stop, so obviously there is some activity in life. But, you know, why is this village here? It's just in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, here we are at our camper stop. We were the only people there, but it was very, very quiet and peaceful. After leaving Dinant, this is where we stayed the night. It was a very, very quiet but comfortable spot. You might wonder how we choose our spots. They're not all pre-booked, but basically we have a rough idea of route. We decide how much we're going to travel each day. Annette will normally choose a place he thinks of interesting, and then I'll go and look up Park for Night, search for site, and then choose a campsite.
The campsite is by the Moselle, and it is a 20-minute walk into town. As you can see, there's lots to do, so it's a great place to visit.
I suppose the best thing to see in Trier is the famous Roman gate, the Porta Nigra. It's also known as the Black Gate. It's one of the best preserved Roman gates in the world and is considered one of the best things to do in Trier. The gate dates back to 170 AD. St. Peter's Cathedral in Trier is the oldest church in Germany. It is thought to be commissioned by Constantine the Great, a Roman emperor from AD 306 to 337. And the first emperor to convert to Christianity. When it was built, it was the grandest ensemble of church structures in the West, outside of Rome, of course. It was allowed to go to ruin by the Franks, but then rebuilt, and then was destroyed again by the Vikings in 882. These Vikings get everywhere. Look what they did to Britain. Today, the cathedral is magnificent and a worthy visit. Try and join a walking tour. You'll learn so much more. This Roman bridge goes back to 144 AD. Originally, it was made of wood so that it could be set on fire in terms of war. Construction started on the Roman baths in 300 AD. However, they were never completed and were made into a castle in the Middle Ages. A visit to Trier's amphitheatre over some 1,700 years ago would push our senses to the limit. Today the animal cages have gone and there are no more public executions of prisoners sentenced to death. Here the masses would come in their droves, for it guaranteed a whole day of top entertainment. Visitors could enjoy the theatre performances and juggling acts, jeer at the fights between boars and lions, bears and bulls, listen to the music which accompanied the dancers, and of course the highlight of the afternoon would be when the gladiators came out to fight. Trier has a lot to offer. It's not just its history, it's a wonderful shopping area. And as you can see, although there aren't many boats in at the moment, it is a major staging part for all the river cruises. So now, sadly, it's time to say goodbye to Trier and we're off to Haguenau. We met two English couples there and we solved the mystery of what was in the box they were towing. So we're continuing our trip, and the reason why I've lumped these stops together is because basically we wanted to get some miles under our belt. Now for those people who watched the previous video or wanted to know what was in the trailer of the English people we met on Haguenau, it was this. Now, if you ever want to get attention, get one of these. These people had so much fun. Everybody wanted to stop them and find out what it was, where they'd been, where they were going. Our next stop was Badbellingham, and we only chose this because Annette was having trouble with her teeth and she'd booked a dentist in the heart of Basel. Now that was a challenge in itself. Luckily, Basel isn't in a low emission zone. But looking at the map, I could see some of the streets look very narrow for our motorhome. So I was a bit concerned. The sat-nav took us directly to the door. But after I dropped Annette off, I found this wonderful spot right down by the river. It was only about 15 minutes away. Whilst I was waiting for Annette, I walked into town. And I could see straight away that Basel was well worth a visit and one we must come back to. Unfortunately, we had to crack on. For the last 5 days, we've done one-night stops. It's not something we normally do. And so now we're really ready for a break. And what an amazing campsite we found. This is what we bumped into. To the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. It wasn't all noise. There was plenty of quiet places and wonderful walks around the lake. We were very sorry to leave, but our next stop was Lake Lugana. We're now travelling through the main Italian lakes, and I've highlighted those main ones. We stayed at Lake Lugana first. As you can see, they are truly remarkable and absolutely stunning and really beautiful. A great place to visit. So we left Lake Lugana and headed for Lake Iseo. And this is another occasion where we found that the campsites on the edge of the lake by the town were all full. So we had to go out of town to camping Sassenbach. And actually, you look at it, it had fabulous facilities. Unfortunately, it was the end of the season and everything was closed. Before we got there, we thought we'd have a quick look at one of these sites on the front. And yes, they are well worth moving to. There are restaurants and sites all overlook the lake and they have great views. When we got to Camp Sassenbach, you could see that plenty of spaces. I don't know why they choose some peculiar ones for us. We had to go back and say we can't park there, we're too big, and they didn't care really. We just parked anywhere. It's an enormous site, and you can see in the height of the summer this must be packed. Yeah, they have a fantastic swimming pool, lots of restaurants on site, and with a short walk you are right on the edge of Lake Iseo.
Even so, there was a lot going on.
Third day, we're on our way to Chioggia, and we chose this campsite because it's very near Venice. We've not been here before, and you can get a water taxi straight into Venice. We're arriving at camping Adrakico, and it was very busy. And as you can see, quite disciplined. We had an organized tour. Well, the guy led us to our pitch just as well, actually, because it's a very tight
Well, I haven't taken the bikes off for such a long time, and it's a bit funny really, but you see that great big bulge down there? That's water that must have been collected while it's been standing. I had no idea it's there. We've been carrying that with us all the way through to Italy. That was so heavy, I couldn't even lift it.
Leaving that problem aside, we were very happy with the campsite. It had a lovely restaurant. We ate there twice and it was excellent food. So why should we choose Chioggia? Well, obviously it's very near Venice and you can get there by water taxi. And by staying in Chioggia, you get the taste of Venice, but in a much smaller way. And you avoid all the masses of crowds that you get in Venice. I think, like most places like that, it's spoiled by its popularity. It gets too crowded. So Chioggia has got a wonderful beach on one side, and then you've got the old city on the other. We have 10 kilometers of beach here, and on the left are all these beach resorts, which are cordoned off areas. Each one's got its own restaurant and masses of chairs and umbrellas and stuff. It's probably not advisable to come here in high season because it looks as if there'd be so many people. From our campsite to the heart of Chioggia was 3.1 kilometers, and You've got to like walking, but I suggest you use a bicycle. It's much easier to get in, and you'll see a lot more. There are bicycle tracks everywhere, and it's very safe until you get into the old city, of course. Chioggia is older than Venice, and historically, fishing was the main livelihood, and it still remains a very important part of the city today. The Vigo Bridge dates back to at least 1379, and it's probably the most photographed monument in Chioggia. Chioggia is beautiful in its own right, and I'll let these few pictures speak for themselves. This is the hub of the old city. The road is Corsa del Popolo. It's full of shops, restaurants, cafes, museums, churches, etc. The most famous inhabitant, of course, is the clock tower, and it's reputedly supposed to be the oldest working clock in the world, although I understand there is a dispute with the clock in Sainsbury Cathedral. The building stands on remnants from the Roman and Byzantine times, and originally used as a watchtower. The clock tower is used as the bell tower for the Church of St. Andrea, which is next door.
You certainly have some challenges when you come to leave these sites. I mean, I've got to get through that gap somehow. It's not easy.
I couldn't, and reversed all the way on the other access to the junction, where an Italian family put all their chairs and tables out and seemed quite reluctant to move it. Honestly, some people. Our next stop was Ravenna, and we chose this because, well, it was on our route, and Annette had found that it was a very interesting place to visit from an Italian guidebook that she has, and boy, were we in for a treat.
We found a great spot on Park for night, with only half an hour's walk into the city centre. It had water and a grey water dump. And then we came up against this. Honestly, this was so complicated. I could not get to understand how I could put in 24 hours for the night. It was only until I saw the top that I sorted it out. And I wasn't the only one. See where we're parked? Right next to this machine. And I must have helped 8 people that night who still struggled just like I did. Ravenna is a great city. And if you've not been there, you should definitely put it on your list. It's a very nice, relaxed, typical Mediterranean atmosphere. But before we go and sample the delights, we obviously have to have a coffee and an ice cream. It's very pleasant just even walking around, but the real delight are within these buildings. What you come to see are these incredible mosaics, and they date from the 6th century, around about 570 AD. So the mosaics that we can appreciate and admire in Ravenna today are more than 1,400 years old. The style of these mosaics is known as Byzantine. These amazing mosaics with their vibrant colours are a major tourist attraction, and they are spread across 8 buildings. These magnificent artworks are now part of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. You walk into these what look like ordinary buildings, and when you get inside you have a wow moment. These are absolutely amazing, and there's so much for the brain to take in that you really, I'm sure you could visit Ravenna over and over again and still not get all that it has to offer. I don't have enough knowledge to be able to explain these mosaics, and I suggest, and this is what I would do if we came here again, is definitely take a guide, and I'm sure that would enrich our experience. But for now, I'll just let these mosaics speak for themselves. We didn't have enough time to really explore Ravenna, and it is a place we must come back to. But anyway, on to our next stop, San Marino. And that didn't turn out quite as we expected.
So what's with all the dramatic music? I think what we were trying to convey is our high expectations of what San Marino was going to be like. After all, it's the oldest republic since AD 301, and it's the smallest independent state in Europe after Vatican City and Monaco. So, with its history, fine buildings, and amazing views, it should tick all the boxes. So why didn't it work for us? Well, I think the reason is that the principal revenue for San Marino is the tourist industry. As such, I think it's lost its heart. There are lots of typical shops you would find solely aimed at the tourist. Watch shops, jewelers shops, tourist tat. So I think it's lost its authenticity. So, would we visit again? Probably not. There are quite a lot of airs for campervans or motorhomes to use. We used Chioggia P13. It was on multi-terraces, had all facilities except electricity. And the good thing, it was within about 20 minutes walk of the gondola, up a very steep hill, I might add. You could find electricity if you drove around to the other side of the hill, where you could pay €2, I think, for an hour's electricity. Maybe we didn't do San Marino justice. But that's the good thing about being in a motorhome. You can always move on to the next stop. And we're looking forward to Pesaro. Our normal rule of thumb is that we always stay 2 nights at the stops. That gives us plenty of time to see and explore the area. But because we've got this deadline for the ferry, we've done a lot of 1-day stops. And so by the time we got to Pesaro, we actually really were looking forward to a bit of a chill out and a rest. And it is a perfect spot. We're so lucky. We've had wonderful weather. It's been actually too hot, and by the time we got here, it's beginning to get to more comfortable 28 degrees.
Hello. Well, this is what they're doing outside the van. Looks very healthy. We're just going to play pool. As you can see, quite a tight fit here. A bit of surreptitious wood cutting. Very handy to have a good saw with us. And we're here. Beautiful spot. Right on our own little private doorway. Right, let's go.
raining now.
It's great.
On the way to the ferry, we stopped at the Nialti restaurant. It was recommended to us by a friend, and what a wonderful spot it is. I had a great meal. Annette said hers wasn't as good. It's one we'd definitely go back to, just for the position, I think, alone.
Left.